Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 40, Euthyphro 5d to 6a. We've seen how Socrates has set up the conversation to talk about to hosion. In particular, he has engineered the conversation so that Euthyphro has to tell him what to hosion is, what the holy is. In fact, that is exactly what Socrates is about to ask Euthyphro. Legede tifes enai to hosion kai tito anosion. Tell me, what do you claim the holy to be, and what the unholy? This is one of those notorious what is X questions that philosophers like to say Socrates keeps asking about. We should bear in mind that this is not Plato asking a question because Plato doesn't understand what to hosion is. This is Socrates asking Euthyphro a question overtly to help Socrates in his court case, although knowing what to hosion is will hardly help in a court case. Truth never helps in a court case. But it's to help Euthyphro. Socrates sees that Euthyphro has a problem with to hosion. Euthyphro doesn't see that he has a problem with to hosion. Therefore, Socrates has made Euthyphro his teacher, as if it's Socrates who needs help. By trying to teach Socrates, Euthyphro may find out that he doesn't understand what to hosion is. We should already be prepared for the possibility that Euthyphro will not find out that he doesn't know anything, because Euthyphro is a model. He cannot change, just like Socrates is a model. But this conversation about to hosion will help us, the readers, know what to look for in the characters in order to understand what the various aspects are and where the confusions lie. In other words, this dialogue, just like any other Platonic dialogue, works on two levels. There are the characters who talk between themselves, and there is the drama which Plato has given us to analyze. Just before his what is X question about the holy and the unholy, Socrates had introduced the notion of asebeia, irreverence, because that is what Meletus has charged him with, because Socrates allegedly neglects the old gods and believes in new ones. But then Socrates gives as an example of asebeia murder, which refers back to Euthyphro's trial. Euthyphro and his family have been treating murder as an act of unholiness, not of irreverence. However, talking about murder does ensure that Euthyphro will answer Socrates' what is X question with details about his own trial. Again, Euthyphro doesn't disappoint. Lego toinon hoti tomen hostiones din hoper egonun poio. I say then that the holy is what I am now doing. Apart from making it personal, Euthyphro is following what Socrates has laid down as to hosion, the holy, that it is about actions. So Euthyphro is doing an action. This is what is holy. But to hosion for Socrates is the holy, holiness in general, and yet for Euthyphro, to hosion is the holy thing, in other words, a particular. This is how he understands to hosion. Euthyphro now tells us what this action is. To adicunti e periphonus e perihieron klopas e ti alloton toiuton examratanunti epexienai. To prosecute someone doing injustice, whether with regard to murders or to thefts from temples or anyone doing something wrong in any other of such things. Note that murders and thefts are acts of injustice, while other such things, in other words, other unholy acts, are not necessarily acts of injustice, they're just things which are done wrong. The person who does them is making a mistake or is just doing wrong. But Euthyphro is careful to distinguish between the person committing injustice and the person doing wrong. This may be a subtle manipulation by Plato, who does want to demonstrate that there is a confusion between things which are unjust and things which are simply considered wrong in terms of holiness. For example, Socrates has been given a graphe, not a dike. What he has done is not an act of injustice, but it's still unholy. And yet, both his case and Euthyphro's case are tried in the same court. And in fact, because they're in a court, they are treated as if they are unjust acts. The holy act here is the prosecution itself. We've already seen that Euthyphro regards the removal of miasma as being done by prosecuting the unholy person in a court of law. So it is holy to prosecute someone unholy, ante pateron tunchane, ante meter, ante allos hostis un, todeme epexienai anosion. Whether he happens to be a father or a mother or anyone else at all, and not to prosecute is unholy. This is Euthyphro going all self-defensive again because he's prosecuting his father, much to the disgust and dismay of his family. There is a case to be made for Euthyphro disrespecting his father, which would be unholy. But Euthyphro has an answer to that. Epe o Socrates theasai hos megasoi erotek merion tu nomu hotiutos eche, hokai allois ede epon, hotitauto orthos an huto gignomina, me epitrepento asibunti med anhotis tunchane on. Observe, Socrates, what a great proof I shall tell you of the law that it is thus, which I have told others already, that these things would come about thus correctly, not to let off anyone being irreverent, no matter who they happen to be. Physicians had already worked out that some things indicate other things. For example, a rash indicates some inflammation somewhere else, and they called this sort of indication a semeion, a sign from which we get semantics. And the law courts took over this term, semeion. For example, if someone happens to have been found over a dead body with a knife in his hand, with blood on the knife, all of these are indications that this person was a murderer. And the prosecution and the defense would both use semeia in their speeches. There was also another term which became popular in the law courts, and this was tekmerion, proof, or megatekmerion, a great proof. And this isn't really the same sort of thing as a semeion. This is more what is normally the case, what one can expect. If this is what happens somewhere else, this is what happened in this particular case. The fact that Euthyphro says megatekmerion, a great proof, indicates that he is a good rhetorician. He understands how the law courts work. And this we can add to previous indications that we've already seen, that he knows how to work a courtroom. Early readers of this dialogue would have been well versed in rhetoric and legal cases, and they would now expect, after this megatekmerion, a plausible reason for prosecuting even one's father or mother for irreverence. Well, this is what Euthyphro gives us. Autoi gar hoi anthropoi ton chanus in nomidzontes ton diaton theon ariston, kai dikaioteton, kai tuton homologusiton hautu patera desai, hotitus hues katepinen Ukendike kake non geau ton hautu patera ectemendi heterotoiauta. For humans themselves happen to believe that Zeus, the best and most just of the gods, even this one, they agree, bound his father because he had swallowed his sons, not justly, and that he, moreover, castrated his father because of some such other things. Emoide chalepainus in hotito patri epexerchomai adicunti, kai hutos autoi hautois ta enantia legus iperiteton theon kai peri emu. And yet they're giving me a hard time because I'm prosecuting my father who is unjust, and thus they are contradicting themselves both about the gods and about me. This then is Euthyphro's megatekmerion, his great proof. He should prosecute his father because Zeus had bound his father Kronos, and Kronos had castrated his father Ouranos, both of those fathers being unjust. And yet when he does it to his father who is unjust, people complain. They believe what was said about the gods, but when it comes to Euthyphro, they behave in the opposite way. This is his tekmerion. We could dismiss the parallel between Euthyphro and the gods as absurd, but it would be more profitable for understanding the dialogue if we actually look at the two cases and see why Euthyphro thinks that they are relevant. Euthyphro says that Ouranos and Kronos were both acting unjustly, which justifies the treatment meted out to them by their sons. But Dike, Justice, hadn't yet been born. She was the daughter of Zeus and Themis. What injustice does Euthyphro see these gods doing? Common to both cases is that the fathers were restricting their children. Ouranos, heaven, was completely covering Gaia, earth, and there was no way for the children of their mating to come out, which is why Gaia advised one of her children, Kronos, to castrate Ouranos, which allowed Ouranos to fly off into space, and then all the children could come out. This isn't actually specified in any of the versions we now have, but I have come to that conclusion. This is the reason for castrating Ouranos. It's a neat little story explaining both the origin of some of the gods and why the sky is so far above the earth. We'll carry on looking at these stories next time.